Hey everyone, hello, happy Friday. And today is my version of Friday called 50 on Friday. It's a series that I'm creating every Friday at noon for a discussion for those of us who have crossed the threshold into our 50s and beyond, or you're smart enough to be in your 40s and want to know what the hell is going on with this aging thing, and you want a little peek at what's coming up. I wish I would have done that, but then there was nobody talking about this back then. So I wanted to get into the conversation around what it means to turn 50 and be in our 50s. And hello, Denise, welcome. And just have the conversation about what's possible. I think we're in an incredibly new age. I say this all the time, like, this is not your mother's midlife. My mother, when she was 50, was really different than I feel like the women in my peer group are as 50. So we have a lot of potential, and we also have a context that we need to operate from. And that's frankly what I'm really good at. I'm really good at creating context. So I thought that this series would help to do that. And we would also dive into the topics of those of us who are interested in certain things. Like I've heard hormones is big on the list. People want to talk about hormones. Hi Molly. Yeah, so we will talk about hormones. That's on the list to talk about. I want to in fact bring in an expert to do an interview with me because I don't know everything about hormones. I used to call perimenopause the shit show of perimenopause because it is. And I took a lot of pride in being able to balance my brain, balance my hormones, and even perimenopause took me for a loop. So I think we need to call in the big guns and have the experts. And I just had a friend too who was calling me, a male friend who had some breakdowns, and I was like, dude, it sounds like andropause. Go get some blood tests and get some more testosterone. So there's a lot of us facing it, and we think it's something else. So we will dedicate an entire 50 on Friday to hormones, and I'll have some good conversations with experts here. And then I've been asked to talk about like energy, beauty, and those are all really awesome topics. So they're on the list. But today's topic is called Sex, Lies, and the Mating Game. And I wanted to start off with that. This is only my second 50 on Friday. And I wanted to start that way because it's, again, a context that I think all the information builds on. And I'll be mentioning it throughout in case people just join. But today, there was a famous book called Sex, Lies, and Menopause from T.S. Wiley. And she was really the start of bioidentical hormones. Suzanne Somers did her protocol, and she advocated dosing yourself at the level of when you were 20. And that required really different dosages because you don't have the same hormones every day. In fact, that's what happens in menopause, is that you level out and have mostly the same levels all the time once you're through it. So when you're not, you have a cycle. And she talked about giving yourself bioidentical hormones at that cycle. So that name has always stuck with me. That book was really provocative. It's very controversial, but I love to read provocative, controversial things and experiment, which, by the way, I am on no bioidentical hormones now. So that'll be for later, but that's an interesting conversation in and of itself, having been on them for years. So a parody to Sex, Lies, and Menopause is Sex, Lies, and the Mating Game. And I had written an article on it about a year and a half ago for an article in Mantra magazine. And some of you remember Mantra Yoga and Health magazine, published by Miranda Pleasant. Hello, Miranda. And it just occurred to me, it was that issue, Sean Korn and Shiva Ray were also turning 50, and so she did a spotlight on turning 50. And what I wrote about was this context that I discovered inside my own self around the mating game. And that context is about how before that, when we are able to procreate, we have that driver is online in our body, meaning it's governing our body. Whether we consciously want to have kids or not, this is the biological imperative that is part of our coding in our DNA that is about the perpetuation of the species. So it didn't ask you personally. It wasn't about you personally. It's just what's in our DNA, in our genetic codes. And I've said to a group of women lately, like, the mating game, pick your exes, right? You know, they did, because a lot of us had children with partners that we're no longer with. And if that's not you, awesome. But a lot of people did. And that doesn't mean failure, that just means that was a different context. Your biology was picking for you. One time I was doing due diligence as a lawyer in Louisiana. First and last time for that one. But I stayed at a hotel and I was working out at the gym. And in the gym was this B movie called Species. And if you've never seen it, you might see it. It's like hilarious. This like gorgeous supermodel type woman is inhabited by an alien, and she's searching for a mate, and she smells them out. And so that reminded me of the mating game. Like, she's searching for the person who can procreate the best with her, to produce the best offspring. And that's just encoded in there. So the cool thing about, like, I'm not a cultural anthropologist or a evolutionary biologist, but this is just something I noticed. So then when I turn 50, what I start to notice is that I don't have that online anymore. Like, even if I didn't want children, which I did, but it's not about the kids, it's just about the whole nature of what I'm interested in is changing. And what I'm attracted to is changing. And that's kind of exciting, and it's kind of scary. And I think that the reason why aging produces so much anxiety for women is because the currency inside the mating game, you're expiring on your currency. That the currency is youth, beauty, and the ability to procreate. So aging can be so anxiety producing because you're outside of the mating game and you don't have that kind of currency anymore. But I'm submitting, and you can read the article on my website. Just go to kenlyncolleen.com because it'll go way more into what I'm going to say here. But what I submit is that your currency changes. And that because we're living a second life, and we actually are living longer, the currency of what's possible is to have personal power and radiance. And a lot of women start to say, well, I feel invisible because they don't have the currency of the mating game. But truly, what's awesome is that you're visible to the people who want what you have, or that you have some kind of pre-existing agreement with. So the invisibility really isn't invisibility. It's just that you're out of the mating game. And I find that personally to be like a tremendous relief, because there's a lot to sift and sort through in the context of the mating game. And of course, remember that imperative, you think you might be in control of that, it has you. I mean, there's no one sadder on the planet than a woman who really wants to be in a relationship and have a baby and can't be, right? Do you remember that? Like I do. And so then when we're outside of that, what's possible is a new context where that imperative hormonally has shifted, and dare we say, we have new codes, and the new codes are to live your authentic expression, to live your radiance, which is beauty within radiating out, and then also to live your personal power, because remember, you're transitioning from the maiden and the mother to the queen. And the queen is not the queen of everyone out there, unless you happen to be a queen out there, but it's the queen of yourself, the inner sovereignty. And that inner sovereignty is its own imperative. And one of my mentors just turned 70, and she's seeing a man, and she calls it that it's not the biological imperative, she calls it the spiritual imperative. She said to me yesterday, I don't even feel like I'm dating because what we're doing here is so different. Like, we don't have names for some of these things that we're doing because all those things were named inside of the mating game. And hello to you guys who are joining us. Hi, Julie. So I feel like it's an incredible time. This information wasn't present way back when, when we were growing up, but now it's coming out. It's coming through me. It's coming through others. And I'm curious what that's going to produce for the younger women who are inside the mating game. Can you imagine if you knew what it was and you knew that your biology and your hormones were basically running you, and then you could bring your conscious mind and awareness into the process and perhaps even make better decisions for yourself? I mean, that would be amazing. And that also might mean that we change the game on the objectification of women. I think inside the mating game, we have wanted to be objectified because that's where our power comes from. And now when we shift outside the mating game and we're into our personal power, our sovereignty, our queen, our power comes from another place. And so objectification isn't actually even interesting. It's not what we want. In fact, we might want to slap it if it comes into our field. And certainly the political spectrum and the Me Too movement and what's coming out in the zeitgeist and culture is to make a big shift about how women are regarded. And that's why I think women outside the mating game can lead this cultural revolution, because we're not tied to being regarded for our bodies or for the fact that we can produce offspring. Yeah, we have a whole new purpose and genetic purpose, like DNA purpose, like codes that are coming in. Not that that was our only purpose back then, but just from an evolutionary biology standpoint. So that's just how I'm looking at it. If you have other thoughts, please include them below, and also include the topics that you're interested in talking about, because this series can really enrich a community of women to start empowering us and to live outside the mating game, which is the cultural norm. We have to have our own context of what the hell we're even doing, so that we're empowered, instead of thinking that we're less than because we're not that, or we lost something because we're not that. The truth is, no, it's just different. It's the afternoon of your life, and you can't compare the morning, the rules of the morning, with the afternoon. That was from Carl Jung. And you can apply that in many different ways, but certainly for me, the mating game is one of the ways that I apply this. It's the game has changed. Who I'm interested in being in relationship or relating with, how I want to be perceived, how I perceive other, all that is shifting. And I don't think it happens magically on one day called you turned 50, but I think it's this process that as I am awake to it, I keep noticing that it deepens and deepens and deepens. And as I talk to our sages and elders in our culture, they too have noticed it, but they don't speak about it generally unless they're doing archetypal women's work, and then that's amazing. So I want to give a little shout out before I end to my friend Amy, who's turning 50 today. Anyone else turning 50 today? Just please write your name down there, and we'll celebrate you. It's an incredible threshold crossing. And tomorrow, if you're in Encinitas, I will be doing the 7 phases of reinvention at the Soul of Yoga, and we're gonna like dance our way through it and feel our way through it. because there's a lot of reinventing that's happening right now, not just to midlife women, but to everybody. I just think midlife women really feel it because you've had a lot of time doing one thing and then it shifts and pivots, and we have to have a new context for that. And then guess what? In October, it looks like will be coming to the Boulder bookstore, so I'm super psyched to go back to Colorado. So stay tuned, more on that. And if you want to know more, go to my website. There's the article there, or get this book, The Art of Turning 50. That allows you to create your own context and work through it yourself. And then stay tuned for more topics on hormones and beauty and whatever else you guys want to talk about. And thank you for joining. Mwah. I love you all. Bye.